We just wrapped up a 12-team head-to-head points mock draft. Let's recap our teams on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Wednesday, February 26th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and we are going to recap our 12-team head-to-head points mock draft. Scott was drafting 12th. I was drafting 8th. Chris was all the way down up at 2nd overall in this one. Scott, let's start with your team. If you're watching along on YouTube, I'll pull up the teams here so you can check them out for yourself. And we will first start with your hitters. You've got William Contreras at catcher, followed by Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Nico Horner, Jazz Chisholm, Mason Wynn, Lawrence Butler, Corbin Carroll, Christian Yelich, Matt Chapman, and you have Randy Arozarena on your bench. So some flexibility once Jazz Chisholm gains second base eligibility. How do you think your hitting lineup turned out?
I like it. I like it a lot. Yes, one of Nico Horner, Matt Chapman, and Randy Arozarena will start once Chisholm gets second base eligibility. And I have some, if Nico Horner's not quite ready or if Matt Chapman falls off a cliff, then I have contingencies there. I do have the one obvious weak point, Mason Wynn, shortstop. That was my third to last pick. Wasn't by design. I wanted a strong hitter everywhere, but it just didn't work out. And once it didn't work out, I kept pushing the envelope for some of those fallback options like Dansby Swanson or Xavier Edwards. Missed out on them too. So Mason Wynn, pretty low end for this league. I do think there is untapped potential, good contact skills, plans to steal a lot more bases this year. He set a goal of 40, and he's the intended leadoff hitter for the Cardinals. So it could work out fine. He could just have a breakout season and be my starter all year long at shortstop. But in a league this shallow, only about 250 players rostered, there are going to be unexpected breakouts on the waiver wire. And I remember in the podcast head-to-head points league last year, I had a similar draft where I just went really weak at second base. And by week 2 or 3, Jordan Westberg was my starter at second base because I picked him off the waiver wire and it was fine. So if you just have that one weak spot, you can really zero in on emerging targets at that position. And there's a chance you'll come away with a good one. And again, maybe that good one is Win. Another thing I did here that I like is Vladimir Guerrero was my second round pick. It's not his best format, but first base is a position where it's easy to get boxed out, where I feel the most stress early in drafts. And I haven't made it a priority generally and have regretted it.
And you'll see that on my team, by the way.
Yeah. But it was between Guerrero and Francisco Lindor with that second pick. Well, I guess I could have secured a shortstop then. But anyway, I took Guerrero, and it turns out it wouldn't have lined up for me to take another quality first baseman. So I think it was the right move. I found that I like picking 12th this year. In a 12-team league, 15-team league is different. But in a 12-team league, your second-round pick picking 12th is probably going to be a first-round caliber bat. And I think the 3-4 turn is just as strong as the 2-3 turn. So the way this team turned out, it kind of reinforces my thinking there. 12-team league, I want to pick toward the end of round 1, generally speaking.
All right, we know that you typically wait on starting pitchers this season, Scott. You didn't take one until round 5, and your pitchers wound up being Tanner Bybee, Jared Jones, Michael King, Seth Lugo, and Aaron Nola. Your relievers, you've got Trevor McGill and Jordan Romano. On the bench, Mitch Keller, Sean Manaea, Robbie Ray, Max Scherzer. So you got some players that do excel in this format in a Lugo and an Aaron Nola, and you also have some upside on the bench. How do you think the pitching came together?
Yeah, I love the pitching upside with Sean Manaea, who's obviously I only got him on my bench because he's hurt, but he shouldn't be hurt for long. Robbie Ray, Max Scherzer, and then the top of my rotation, a 1 and 2 of Michael King, Aaron Nola, rounds 5 and 6. That's about as early as I'm ever going to draft 2 pitchers this year. It just so happened the stud hitters were already depleted by that point in the draft. So I feel really good about this pitching staff too. I think it's going to be among the better I builds of this year. And I especially want to draw attention to my 2 relievers, Trevor McGill and Jordan Romano. Those were my last 2 picks in the draft. and they're Trevor McGill and Jordan Romano, which I think is perfectly fine. Obviously, each team only starts 2 relievers, and a lot of them, those spots are filled by relief pitcher eligible starters. So you never go that deep into the closer pool in a points league. I'm not saying there's no risk with those two, especially Jordan Romano. There's a health risk there. If it doesn't work out, there are closers that went undrafted, and I can just swap them out. But I think as a starting point, McGill and Romano, I'm perfectly happy with that, and I made basically no investment in them.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll take a look at my team right after this.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Welcome back in FBT Express. We're recapping our latest 12-team head-to-head points mock draft and taking a look at my team. I was drafting 8th overall. Started my draft with 5 straight hitters. I've got Adley Rutschman at catcher, followed by Paul Goldschmidt. Waited at first base, unfortunately. Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, Francisco Lindor, Adolis Garcia, Ian Happ, Kyle Tucker, and then Kyle Schwarber as my utility hitter here. And it feels okay. I thought maybe taking 5 hitters in a row, there wouldn't be a few dead spots here, but like first base doesn't feel great. Adolis Garcia, I kind of waited a little bit too long for my 3rd outfield spot. There are some players that excel in this format, like Schwarber is going to be great. I think Ian Happ is someone who's a little bit better. Maybe Bogart's a little bit better in this format as well. Scott, what do you think about my hitting here?
So I don't like that there are 3 weak points. Let's call it 2.5, because I think Xander Bogaerts is probably fine in this format. But Goldschmidt and Adolis Garcia, I think you're going to be looking for an upgrade for both of those for sure. I'd rather just be able to focus on one position I need to upgrade. It could work out. I mean, they could have bounce back seasons for one, and they play positions where there's a low defensive threshold. So it's even more likely you'll find a breakout performer off the waiver wire, but it's going to be a little more difficult to navigate. I still think it'll probably be fine just because those 5 hitters you invested in are so good, especially, you got Adley Rutschman at catcher, Manny Machado at 3rd, Francisco Lindor at shortstop, Kyle Tucker in the outfield. Those guys are so good, they might just be the best at their position this year. They have that kind of upside. So I think you'll be okay.
All right, let's take a look at the pitchers again. I did wait until round 6 to take my first starter and wound up with Hunter Brown, Sonny Gray, Shota Imanaga, Bailey Ober, Carlos Rodon. My relievers, Ryan Helsley. I took Grant Holmes as a potential spark. And on the bench, I've got some upside with David Festa, Quinn Matthews, Brandon Pfaadt, Jose Soriano, and Gavin Williams. So not a typical team, Scott. I went into this mock draft knowing that I wanted to wait at starting pitcher and see how it turned out. I don't have any of my top 15 starting pitchers that are ranked, but I did wind up with 5 between my SP 18 and SP 40. So I feel like the depth actually turned out okay. What do you think about the pitching staff?
Yeah, 1 through 5 I think is fine. Very solid. Not flashy, but very solid. Those are guys you're going to keep on your roster all season long, barring injury. I wish the bench was a little stronger. Quinn Matthews and David Festa, it's not even clear they'll have rotation spots. Gavin Williams seems like a wild card. I just wish it was a little more bankable. But it's a shallow league, and you'll be swapping out starting pitchers all season long. So I don't think it's the end of the world.
All right, let us know in the comments. Who do you think had a better draft, me or Scott? We are going to wrap there. Thanks for listening to FBT Express. Make sure to listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.